With no parent, legal counsel, manager, or even a good friend, I signed it. I was maybe 18 years old. I was trying to be loyal to someone who believed in me at a crucial time, but in my naivete, I didn't realize the enormity of what I had signed away. The music business is designed to confuse and control the artist.
Hello everybody, and welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're diving into one of the most controversial business relationships in music history. Mariah Carey and her former collaborator, Ben Margulies. Together, they created some of Mariah's biggest hits. But behind the scenes, things took a dramatic turn. A shady contract, a broken partnership, and a lesson for all artists. This is the untold story of how Mariah Carey got scammed with an immoral deal. Be sure to like and subscribe, and now let's get into it. Before she became the icon that we know today, Mariah Carey was just an aspiring singer-songwriter in New York City trying to break into the music industry. In the late 1980s, Mariah met Ben Margulies, a then unknown songwriter and producer. The two instantly clicked, and together they wrote what would become the majority of Mariah's debut album.
Ben had his own studio, and I had begun working with him occasionally during my singer-student Long Island commuter days. Located in the back of his father's cabinet-making factory, it was about the size of a pantry. It could have been a chicken coop for all I cared, and it honestly wasn't far from that. What mattered was that it was almost a full recording studio, the place where I belonged. For me, the studio is part sanctuary, part playground, and part laboratory. I loved being there, writing, riffing, singing, dreaming, and taking risks.
In a woodshop turned studio, Ben helped Mariah record her signature sound, which was soulful, emotive, and full of those famous high notes. But deep down, Ben knew that Mariah didn't need him to become successful, and had secretly hoped that they would become a duo.
Ben and I were both excited by the songs we were working on, but ultimately our sensibilities and ambitions were incompatible. I think he thought we were going to form a duo like the Eurythmics, with him as co-lead, the Dave Stewart to my Annie Lennox. I was like, good luck with that. Can we just focus on putting down my songs, please?
For a time, it seemed like both Mariah and Ben were on the road to fame and fortune together. But behind the scenes, Margulies was planning something that would soon become a nightmare for Mariah.
Ben suggested we have some security in place by way of a formal agreement.
Before she got her big break, Mariah and Ben had signed a contract outlining their agreement as songwriting partners, where they each would essentially have a 50% stake in their collaborative work. Sounds normal, right? Well, here's where it gets shady. Mariah's deal with Ben entitled him to half of her future earnings, to which Mariah thought was just for their original songs. But it, in fact, was for their work, and any future projects she worked on without him. In addition, she signed over her artist royalties.
Ben's deal was truly a golden ticket. He got 50% of the publishing on all songs we worked on together for my first album. Okay, fine. But additionally, he received 50% of my artist royalties for the first album, 40% for the second album, 30% for the third, and so on.
Luckily, she didn't sign over her publishing, due to her watching a Beatles documentary as a kid and seeing that they didn't own their music.
I was maybe 18 years old. Obviously, I didn't know much about contracts and deals then, but what I did know was that there was value in my lyrics and the songs. I remembered seeing a documentary on the Beatles when I was growing up and being shocked that they didn't have complete ownership of the songs they'd written. The Beatles. So I knew not to give away all my publishing.
Mariah, who just turned 18 and thought she was helping a friend, had unknowingly locked herself into a contract that favored Ben far more than it did her. Ben, who knew he was taking advantage of Mariah, had just set himself up for life. Mariah would end up stating that she signed one of the worst deals in history.
Signed like the worst deal in history.
Fast forward to 1990. Mariah's career took off with her debut album, and suddenly she was one of the biggest stars in the world. Her collaborations with Margulies were now earning millions. But as Mariah's career skyrocketed, tensions with Ben started to rise. Mariah, who was gearing up to release her second album, had moved on to work with top-tier producers and writers, but soon found out that she was still entitled to pay Ben. Despite her attempts to get him to rework the contract, he wanted to be compensated on the same level as her new collaborators, even though he was no longer actively working on her projects. The person who was once her childhood friend essentially turned into her pimp, requiring her to pay him every time she got paid. Mariah, who realized the extent of what she had done, cut all ties with Ben and continued on with her career while still paying him. But by 1994, when her most successful album at the time, titled Music Box, sold an unprecedented 10 million copies in its first year, she had enough. She realized how unfair her contract with Ben was and decided to seek help from her husband and CEO of Sony Records, Tommy Mottola. What followed was a long and bitter legal battle. Mariah argued in court that the contract was exploitative and signed when she was young and inexperienced. Ben, on the other hand, fought back, claiming he was entitled to his share of the royalties. While some details of the settlement remain private, Mariah stated in her 2020 memoir that she had to pay Ben a significant sum to end the partnership, and that the court case was drug out for years. She also stated that he would only be entitled to earnings from her debut album that they worked on. Even though Mariah had to sacrifice financially, she ultimately freed herself from the grip of that original contract. It's crazy to think someone got paid hundreds of millions without doing any work. So, what happened to Ben? After the split, he never saw the same level of success without Mariah. While he continued working in the industry, the hits never came like they did when he and Mariah were a team. Fans still to this day bombard him with comments calling him out, leading him to delete most of his social media accounts. Ben would attempt to get back in Mariah's good graces by attending her induction into the Songwriters Hall of Fame in 2022. But Mariah never gave him the time of day. Mariah, on the other hand, went on to become one of the best-selling artists of all time. And while she's mostly left the legal drama behind, she stated that she wishes Ben the best and has moved on. She keeps a tight circle of friends and collaborators now, as she knows that she can't trust everyone. This saga serves as a reminder to all aspiring artists. Always read the fine print and don't sign away your future. Anyways, that's all I have for today. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you all in the next one.
Even though Ben didn't write one word or note with me after the first album, out of loyalty to him and the hard work we put in together in that little studio, I never looked back and never tried to reset or recoup. That's the unceremonious origin of my first official deal. What a welcome to the music business. My first signature was on a pretty shady piece of paper, and one that would be hard to get out of. But it certainly wouldn't be the last. A whole forest full of shade was yet to come. One must pick one's battles wisely, and I wasn't about to come for someone who I had already left behind. I was on my way. I'll be eternally grateful, and I wish him well. At least we made the demo.